The happiest day of my life became the day I questioned every memory I had ever lived. I was sitting in the front row of my son Ethan's college graduation, holding the same old video camera I had carried to every birthday party, every little league game, every school play, and every family vacation for the last 22 years. My wife, Laura, sat beside me with tears already running down her face. We were proud. Our only son was graduating with honors from one of the best engineering schools in the country. I remember looking at Laura and joking that we had officially become old. She laughed, squeezed my hand, and said, "We did a good job." I smiled because I believed every word of it. Then, just before Ethan's name was called, the back doors of the auditorium opened. A man I had never seen before walked inside carrying a large brown envelope. He wasn't dressed like a graduate or a parent. He looked nervous, determined, and completely out of place. He walked straight toward the stage, whispered something to the dean, and a moment later the ceremony stopped. 500 people turned to look at him. Then he took the microphone, looked directly at me, and said, "Before Ethan Walker receives his diploma, he deserves to know who his biological father really is." The entire auditorium went silent. My wife grabbed my arm so tightly it hurt. I couldn't understand what I had just heard. Then the man slowly held up an envelope marked DNA test results, and my perfect life began to fall apart. My name is Michael Walker, and this is the story of how one envelope at my son's graduation destroyed 22 years of certainty, and forced all of us to decide whether being a father is measured by blood or by love. 22 years earlier, my life had looked exactly the way I imagined it would. Laura and I met in college during our sophomore year at the University of Michigan. She was studying journalism, and I was studying civil engineering. We met because she accidentally spilled coffee all over my notebook in the campus library. She apologized so many times that I eventually laughed and invited her to dinner. That dinner turned into another one. Then another. Before long, we were inseparable. Laura was kind, intelligent, and endlessly curious. She wanted to travel the world. I wanted to build bridges and highways. Somehow, our different dreams fit together perfectly. We married 2 years after graduation. We weren't wealthy. Our first apartment had leaky windows and a refrigerator older than both of us. But we were happy. We worked hard. Saved every dollar. Built our life one paycheck at a time. 3 years later, Laura told me she was pregnant. I still remember that morning. She placed a tiny pair of baby shoes on the breakfast table. At first, I didn't understand. Then she started crying. I started crying too. It remains one of the happiest memories of my life. 9 months later, Ethan was born. The nurse placed him in my arms. He wrapped his tiny fingers around mine. In that moment, nothing else in the world mattered. People often say fathers are made the day their children are born. I disagree. I think fathers are made every single day afterward. Every diaper. Every bedtime story. Every scraped knee. Every science project. Every nightmare. Every baseball practice. Every graduation. Every ordinary Tuesday when you choose to show up. That's how I became Ethan's father. When he was 5, he broke his arm falling from a tree. I spent the entire night sleeping in the hospital chair beside him. When he was 9, he became terrified of thunderstorms. For nearly 2 years, every time lightning struck, he climbed into my bed. When he was 13, another boy bullied him at school. I taught him confidence instead of revenge. When he was 16, he failed his driving test. He thought I would be angry. Instead, we stopped for ice cream on the way home. Because failing one test doesn't define a person. Moments like those define a family. Not DNA. At least, that's what I believed. Laura was an incredible mother. Supportive. Patient. Loving. We weren't perfect. No marriages. We argued about money sometimes. About work. About where to spend holidays. But never once. Not once. Did I question her loyalty. Until graduation day. After the stranger made his announcement. The dean looked completely confused. He tried taking back the microphone. The man refused. Instead, he looked directly at Ethan. My name is Daniel Brooks. And I've spent 22 years looking for you. Laura suddenly stood up. No. Her voice echoed across the auditorium. The entire audience stared at her. I've never seen fear on someone's face the way I saw it on hers. Daniel slowly opened the envelope. I don't want to ruin anyone's life. I only want the truth. Laura ran toward the stage. Security intercepted her before she reached him. She screamed. She begged him to stop. She kept repeating, "Please, not today. Not today." Those words confused me. Not you're lying. Not that's impossible. Just, not today. I stood frozen. Unable to think. Unable to breathe. Daniel removed several papers from the envelope. Then quietly explained. He and Laura had dated briefly before she met me. He claimed she suddenly disappeared. Stopped answering calls. Moved away. 22 years later, he accidentally discovered Ethan through social media. He noticed the dates. The ages. The photographs. Something felt wrong. Eventually, he hired a private investigator. The investigator located old hospital records. Then Daniel secretly submitted a DNA sample after recovering a water bottle Ethan discarded during a public charity event 6 months earlier. My stomach turned. This couldn't be happening. Daniel held up the DNA report. 99.99% probability. The room became silent. I looked at Laura. She couldn't even look back at me. That hurt more than anything. Ethan slowly walked off the graduation stage. He looked at his mother. Then at me. Finally, he whispered, "Dad." One word. One heartbreaking word. I didn't know how to answer. Because for the first time in 22 years, I didn't know who I was supposed to be. The ceremony ended immediately. Families quietly left the auditorium. Reporters gathered outside after someone posted the incident online. Within an hour, videos from the graduation had already spread across social media. My phone exploded with messages. I ignored every single one. We drove home in complete silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody cried. The silence somehow hurt more. The moment we entered the house, I looked at Laura, then quietly asked the question that terrified me most. "Is it true?" She closed her eyes. For nearly 30 seconds. She said nothing. Finally, she whispered one word. "Yes." Everything inside me shattered. Not because another man shared my son's DNA. Because the woman I trusted more than anyone had looked into my eyes every single day for 22 years. And carried that secret alone. I slowly sat down. Laura fell to her knees. She reached for my hand. I pulled it away. Then I asked the second question. "Did you always know?" She started crying harder. Then nodded. Yes, she had always known. And suddenly, the life I thought I remembered didn't feel like my life anymore. After Laura whispered yes, the entire room fell silent. 22 years. 22 birthdays. 22 Christmas mornings. 22 Father's Days. And every single one had been built on a secret. I stood up without saying another word. I grabbed my car keys. Laura called my name. I kept walking. She followed me into the driveway. "Michael, please." I turned around. "Don't." She stopped. "I need to explain." I looked directly into her eyes. "No. You've had 22 years to explain." I got into my truck and drove. For almost 3 hours. I drove without knowing where I was going. Eventually, I parked beside the same lake where I had taught Ethan how to fish when he was 8 years old. I sat there until my phone rang. It was Ethan. For a moment, I couldn't answer. Finally, I picked up. Neither of us spoke. Then I heard him crying, "Dad." That one word broke me. I don't know who I am anymore. I closed my eyes. Neither did I. He asked if we could meet. I immediately said yes. An hour later, we sat on a wooden bench overlooking the lake. He looked completely lost. "I took your last name," You raised me. You taught me everything. He looked down. But today, someone else said I'm his son. I looked at him carefully, then asked, "What do you think?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know." For the first time, I realized he wasn't choosing between two fathers. He was trying to understand himself. Before we could say anything else, Laura arrived. She looked exhausted. She slowly walked toward us, then stopped several feet away. "I owe both of you the truth." Neither of us interrupted. She took a deep breath, then began. 23 years earlier, before she met me, she had briefly dated Daniel Brooks. The relationship lasted only 4 months. According to Laura, Daniel was charming, funny, ambitious. Then one evening, he received a job offer in Europe. He accepted immediately. He wanted Laura to leave college and move with him. She refused. They argued. He left anyway. A week later, they broke up. A month after that, she discovered she was pregnant. She immediately tried contacting him. His phone number changed. His apartment was empty. His company said he had relocated overseas. 4 months. She couldn't find him. Then, she met me. She admitted she planned to tell me everything on our 3rd date. Then our 5th. Then before our wedding. Then after the honeymoon. Every time. Fear stopped her. She was terrified I'd leave. Then Ethan was born. She watched me become his father. Every day the truth became harder to tell. Not easier. She cried. I convinced myself I was protecting both of you. I quietly answered. You were protecting yourself. She lowered her head. I know. Then something unexpected happened. My phone rang. It was Daniel. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. His voice sounded calm. I don't want money. I don't want to replace you. I only want one conversation. I agreed. The next afternoon, we met inside a lawyer's office. Just the 3 of us. Me, Daniel, Ethan. Daniel looked nothing like the villain I imagined. He looked nervous, almost afraid. He immediately apologized. I should never have interrupted graduation. I just didn't know how else to reach him. Then he opened an old folder. Inside were dozens of letters. Every letter was addressed to Laura. Every one had been returned unopened. He showed passport stamps, employment contracts, emails, even copies of messages sent through mutual friends. For 22 years, he had believed Laura wanted nothing to do with him. He had no idea Ethan existed. He quietly looked at me. If I had known, I would have fought for him. I believed him. Not because of his words. Because of his eyes. He wasn't trying to steal my son. He was mourning 22 years he never got to live. Then Ethan asked him one question. Why didn't you stop looking? Daniel smiled sadly. I never stopped. I only stopped knowing where to search. Nobody spoke. Finally, Ethan looked at me. Then at Daniel. I don't want to lose either of you. Daniel nodded immediately. I'm not asking you to. Then Ethan turned toward me. His voice shook. You'll always be my dad. I couldn't hold back anymore. I hugged him. For the first time since graduation, I cried. Not because I lost a son. Because I realized. I never had. Biology had changed. Love hadn't. Months passed. Laura and I attended counseling. Not to save our marriage. To understand whether it could be saved. Trust doesn't disappear in one day. It disappears one lie at a time. And rebuilding it takes even longer. Some days we made progress. Some days we didn't. Meanwhile, Daniel slowly became part of Ethan's life. Not as a replacement. As an addition. They met for coffee. Baseball games. Weekend lunches. 22 years couldn't be recovered. But new memories could still be created. 1 year later, Ethan graduated from graduate school. This time, There was no drama. No reporters. No secrets. Just family. When his name was called, he looked into the audience. 3 people stood together. Laura, Daniel, and me. After the ceremony, someone asked Ethan for a family photograph. The photographer looked confused. So, who's the father? Ethan smiled, then placed one hand on my shoulder, the other on Daniel's, then quietly answered, I was lucky. I got 2. The photographer smiled. The camera flashed. And for the first time, no one was pretending. Years later, people still asked me whether I regretted staying in Ethan's life. My answer never changed. A DNA test can identify who helped create a child, but it can never measure who stayed awake through fevers, who taught him to ride a bike, who celebrated every birthday, who believed in him when he doubted himself. Fatherhood isn't proven by blood. It's proven by showing up. Every single day. Laura spent 22 years believing one secret would protect her family. Instead, the truth nearly destroyed it. But honesty, given a chance, built something stronger than lies ever could. Because families aren't held together by perfect beginnings. They're held together by the courage to face painful truths and still choose to love one another.